Welcome to Feel Good Friday. Today we are having a focus on the feet, the ankles, and the calves. And there's lots of reasons you'd want to target these areas. Perhaps you've strained, perhaps you have swelling, perhaps you're dealing with something more like plantar fasciitis or neuropathy, or you tore an Achilles tendon 20 years ago. So there's lots of reasons using your vibration plate can offer relief. And today's going to be a good example of some spot treatments that you can do on your machine. A minute or two, any of the examples I'll be going through today as needed, and listen to your body. If you are prone to issues in these areas, and or you're dealing with some old sports injuries, there's a lot of reasons that you'll have reasons to spot treat these areas, but 1 to 2 minutes per position is really all you need on what I would call a spot treatment. If you're doing a couple of different positions, you may want to use some of these as a warm-up, or as a recovery after you've done activity. So warming up the joint, getting some circulation going there's lots of reasons to benefit from some of the tricks I'm going to show you today. Something I wanted to show you first that we'll be using in our session today. I have my trusty stool for those of you that need. Hello, welcome to the session. Fran, how are you? Hi. Feel free to unmute if you do have questions as I'm walking along here. I was just about to get started, and I've got my stool, my machine, and I was just about to go over some highly expensive accessories that I'll be using today. I'm in Canada, and pool noodles are hard to find this time of year, but for those of you in the US and in warmer climates, there's a couple of different sizes of pool noodles. This one's going to be about a $3-4 investment at Walmart. And what I've done is I've cut it the width of my machine. So depending on how wide your machine is, and you'll get 2 good chunks with a little piece left over that my kids always play with. But this one is kind of a full roller. And what I've done with the other piece is I've kind of sliced it in half, so you got a bit of a half roller. The reason I use pool noodles, I'm a budget conscious mom, but when you're adding vibration to what you're doing with these rollers, your traditional physio or other rollers you may have around the house are too dense, or if they're plastic, they're just going to bounce all over the machine. What these will do, because they're softer and a little squishier, the arches of the feet, the ankles, the back of the knees, there's reasons I'll use a pool noodle and mimic roller positions on the machine to wedge that vibration into those areas and bridge the gap for those body parts that don't come in contact with the machine. So depending on what you're working on today, I am working on a Rumblex from Life Pro, and this one's got a few different movement functions, and we're just going to be working today in oscillating because it's the best representation of what everybody's using. For what we're doing today with just the feet and the ankles, we are going to do a couple of standing positions, but we will be primarily seated. So I want your machine at about a mid to higher speed, whatever is your comfort level. If you've been working with your machine for a while, probably if you got 100 speeds, I want you in the 50 to 70 range. If you've got 50 speeds, I want you in the 20 to 30 range. Position your feet about hip width apart. If you've got a little bit more meat on your bones and you want a bit more intensity and it's hard to get those thighs close, you might have to put your feet a little bit wider. Reduce the speed if you're finding it uncomfortable. But if you're able, I always prefer a mid to higher speed with feet closer than slow and wide and choppy. It just, too many people are dealing with joint issues and arthritis and everything else. So we're just going to sit here for about 30 seconds to a minute. I've got my machine going a little slower just for camera visual, but I want you just get the blood going a little bit first. And we're just going to do some basic exercises. If you are dealing with neuropathy, plantar fasciitis, it might be hard to stand. Neuropathy is going to, you're going to be unstable, might have some sharp shooting pains from time to time. Whereas with plantar fasciitis, it's the pain. You wish you were numb and didn't feel it. So if you have any stretches or exercises you are supposed to be doing for either of those positions, do them on the machine. So I've shown this one before, but a good little warm up we're going to start with is we're just going to do a lift. We're going to pull those toes towards us, and we're going to try stretching that calf. 2 to 3 seconds. Switch off, other side. 2 to 3 seconds. Next round, we're going to look like ballerinas. We're going to point the toes. So lift and point the toe. And you'll feel a stretch even all the way up into the thigh if you're getting your legs straight. Okay. If you're feeling a cramp set in, release the leg. You don't have to hold it as long as I do. It might be just raising and putting it back down. You know, progress in how long you can hold that leg up over time, okay? And then we'll do a couple more pulling the toes. I like to rotate those. And kind of whatever feels good. Like maybe, you know, you want to roll your ankles or things like that. We're going to progress to adding some toys to the equation. And the first thing we're going to start with is the pool noodle that I have in half. If you don't have a pool noodle today, that's fine. These are just ideas for next time. But I'm going to lay it and I'm going to kind of wedge it under the calf, under the heel. Okay? So if you are dealing with plantar fasciitis, neuropathy, fallen arches, you've got pain in any way, you'll kind of feel your ankles collapse in a little bit. You can just roll your feet, you know, forward and backward. All we're trying to do is get the vibration into the arch of the foot, which isn't quite in contact with the machine. Okay, the other thing that you can do if you are dealing with really tight calves, bring your feet a little bit further back, position that under the ball of the foot, and you're almost going to feel a little bit of a calf stretch starting, depending on how much flexibility that you have. I work with a lot of pediatric use and where the children can't put their heels flat on the machine. This is a good way to kind of start forcing some structure and some range of motion in that ankle. So the same thing can be utilized for us as adults, where we've got, you know, all kinds of things going on in these joints where the range of motion has just deteriorated over time. So a variation, if you are able to stand, is to stand on this thing. Bend your knees a little bit. You'll feel more body weight come into the equation. You like it or you don't. If you're dealing, like I say, with plantar fasciitis or pain, this might be too much. So if you're feeling it's too intense or too strong, you can sit back into the chair. The reason we've got a couple of different heights on the pool noodles, so that was the one cut in half. The fuller one, it's going to bring you up taller, but you can roll with it. So if you're limited to just sitting in a chair, it gets boring listening to me for 5-10 minutes, standing and doing other things when you can't participate. So this is just yet another variation of something you can do while you're sitting there. And if you're sitting in front of your computer or your desk, it gets a little bit of range of motion going in those knees too, instead of just sitting there. These are just fun, silly things between me and my children that we've played with on the machines. But I really do like the pool noodle idea and a little bit of rolling versus what you may have already around the house. Another variation we're going to do, we're going to target and we are going to stand for this one. For safety purposes, I'm going to use the flat one today because I don't want to do a face plant on camera by accident. Has happened. So start with your flat pool noodle for your standing positions. I do not want you rolling off the machine. We're going to take one foot and place it on the pool noodle, on the ball of the foot. Same thing here. Knees are slightly bent. I want you leaning over on your chair. And we're just going to do a little calf stretch. Yes, this is one of those exceptions where we do lock up the legs. Bend. So do that for about 3 to 5 seconds. If you're finding it's too much intensity, bring your feet closer together. Okay? That's a little bit easier. For those of you that don't have a machine with handles, for some of the calf work, calf raises, stretches, you'll want a chair for stability or your fingers close to the wall just to catch yourself. Okay? So another way that we can do this, we want to target and shape those calves, and we want to have strength and stability in the ankles. Calf raises don't seem like a big deal. Most of people aren't doing calf raises now, unless you're wearing high-heeled shoes. But if you're going to do a calf raise on a vibration machine, you're moving. And many of us have immobile joints, and I don't want anybody rolling an ankle. So tuck this under your heel to kind of get you halfway up into that calf raise. And then from there, just come up onto the toes a little bit and come back down. Okay, so you're only having to go up an inch or two versus the whole weight. And if you are feeling unstable and you're wobbling, you've got that pool noodle there kind of to give you a little support to rest on. If you got game, you're going to stand up on the toes. If you got good balance and you're a yoga queen, that's probably easy, but it's nice to have the pool noodle as a little bit of support, if you will. Okay? Next variation on a calf stretch, everybody has stood off the edge of a chair or the edge of their deck and stretched those calves. Take your feet just off the edge of the platform so you're resting on the balls of your feet. You can do this in either direction. And you're going to lock those legs. You'll notice when your heels are not on the platform, you really don't feel anything up past the knee. The heel is the point of contact, and that's what transfers the movement up to your body. So if you're just resting with your heels off the edge, the ankle joints are taking most of the movement, and you're not going to feel it much up past the knees. So again, it's okay. It's an exception to lock those legs. We're just going to try pushing those heels down to the ground, and you'll feel a nice stretch up through the hamstrings as well if you're tight there. Bend those knees. 2, 3, 4 seconds. We'll do this again. 1, 2, 3. Now, if you really want to be a rock star and you want to combine them, you can do a raise and a stretch. You can come up onto the toes and back down. I prefer 1 foot at a time. So if you want, come up on that toe and then push that heel back down if you're able to stand. So you're standing on your leg and doing this 1 leg at a time versus leaning on the stool and doing 2 at a time. It really depends. If you're quite a bit larger and you're working with a machine that's 20, 30 pounds, you probably don't want to do this because you're going to tip your machine. So I'm tipping mine a little bit now. So the reason for the stool is to distribute your weight a little bit more onto the stool and still take advantage of being able to do that calf stretch. Okay? So another variation that we're going to do, you're going to want your flat one, is the top of the foot. Okay? So position this further back. We're going to stand with that behind us. We're going to take 1 foot and just kind of just add, all you're doing is every little stretch you do sitting under your desk or you use to play with, but you're adding vibration in a safe way without falling on your face. Okay, another little stretch. Okay, you could do this one kneeling on the ground as well, but I wanted to show you some standing options. This one, 2, 3, 4 rotations. You know, our feet move in this fashion, so we got to make sure that we're given, you know, range of motion works a lot of different ways. And another thing you could do if you're feeling stable, where's my mat? You could just take a yoga mat, depending on the surface of your machine, and you could just do some ankle rolls. You know, all you're, again, doing is just getting some stimulation from the machine, and, you know, you don't have to do it as long, right? It's always funner on the machine than on the floor, okay? So next variation, we're going to do a little bit of massage on the ground. So if you do have range of motion and you want to join me, I'm going to be sitting my bum on the ground here. I'm going to move my stool. Okay. Move my machine a bit. So to massage the calves, and I've done this in some of my massage series, if you deal with excessive swelling, you've got varicose veins, there's a million reasons that we want to target our calves. So if you're down on the ground, we're going to take our feet, and you want the ankles just off the ends so that the ankles aren't bouncing around on the machine. Depending on how tall you are, you're probably going to get just up to the back side of the knee. And this is very basic how you start a massage. If your range of motion isn't great, you might want to get yourself up a little higher on a step or something so you're not having to go all the way down. If you want, you can lay down on the ground. You can lift your bum up to get a little more body weight in it. Experiment. That's the big thing I'm always trying to say. If you are dealing with swelling, particularly in the ankles, below the knee in general, oh, I ran out of time. I know I've rambled for 10 minutes because I had to restart my machine. Take that pool noodle, the round one or the half one, whatever feels comfortable for your ankle. And we're going to just put the back of the ankles on it, under that Achilles tendon. Okay, now I wouldn't be putting a whole lot of weight into it unless you've got upper body strength. If you're really sensitive and prone to bruising, you know, just start minimally and relax the feet on there. You can pull your toes and get a little bit of a stretch if you want. But this is a way to get into that Achilles tendon, target swelling if you have in those areas. If you do have any lumps and bumps that are painful there, the pool noodle also tends to be a little kinder than your traditional rollers if you're using those type of things. Another thing that you can do for this, depending on your range of motion, is you can hit the tops of the ankles. So you're going to move this a little bit closer, and you might have to kind of wiggle and maneuver your body to see what works for you, but you can just rest on the tops. You might want to get up. I'm tall, so I've got long shins and can do this, but if you need to prop yourself up, but this is just a way to hit the top of the foot using that pool noodle again, okay? And then really from there, maybe it's the side of the ankle. You know, you can maneuver, if you've got the range of motion and the mobility, you know, just move your body around until you're hitting whatever parts you need. You can also target the backs of the knees. There happens to be a few of you in this group that have lumps behind the backs of your knees. It's something, it's a telltale sign, right? And, primarily we're targeting the calves and the ankles today, but you may find, and some of you have said, I massaged here and I ended up swelling here. So depending on where your congestion is in your lymphatic system, or maybe you've got some scar tissues, there's all different reasons that block our lymph flow and our circulation. So if you are noticing swelling after you've been doing your massage in other areas, you might need to help it along and give it a little help in those areas. So just by placing your legs over this, you're getting the meaty part of the knee on that pool noodle, and it's a really good way to target fluid. Just get some range of motion. If you have overdone it, not that anybody ever overdoes it in this group, but if you've overdone a walk or something else and the knees are sore, the joints are sore, maybe a minute or two of this just doing massage. While everybody's usually sitting on the machine if you've got the range of motion, so while you're already down here, if you want to add something like this with your pool noodle, that's a good way to do it. And last but not least, bouncing all over on body parts here, but the front of the shins. Now, not everybody here is a big runner, marathon type person, but shin splints, those type of things are a good way to get some relief on the machine. For this community, it's about varicose veins and soreness and fluid. So I would recommend putting a mat on your machine. You don't have a lot of cushion on the shin. We don't tend to have 4 to 5 inches of fat or meat like we do on the back. And then we're just going to kneel on it. I'm going to go this way. In last week's section, when I did the lower back, I did like a cat-cow type thing, okay? This is just, again, another way. I like to sit on it if I'm working my varicose veins, which are a plentiful. It just gets more body weight into it if your knees allow you to sit like this. If this is too hard, you can come up onto your knees. The kneecaps are just off. You can kind of shift your weight from side to side. If you want to target the hips and the low back, at the same time, while you're treating those calves, you could lean over and, do something that looks like this, okay? So that's a few variations. How often can I do something like this? Really, whenever you need. I don't want people out there using their machines for 3, 4, or 5 hours a day. But, if it's a trouble spot for you, you're stuck at home and your machine is sitting there, of course you're going to want to get on it for a minute or two. So less is more. For spot treatments, I'm doing 10, 15 minutes of talking on top of this, but we really only did about 3 or 4 variations on a few positions. Experiment with them, find which 2 or 3 work for you and what's comfortable, and just add them into your regular thing. Or, as you're, I don't know, walking the dog and realize your ankles have puffed up, maybe, a couple minutes after for recovery. So total daily use, I'm getting lots of questions about that. I would say, depending on what your manufacturer has recommended, but you bought this machine because it's supposed to make everything quick and easy. And then everybody's like, well, can I go for like 2 hours a day? I mean, you can if you want, but the machine isn't built to go 14, 15 hours a day. So if you've got 8, 9 people in the house using it for an hour each, you're going to shorten the life of your equipment. So some of the stuff that I teach you as well, the short, quick, using it more often, is also about prolonging your investment. I have beaten these machines up for 14 years. And, at the end of the day, proper use is going to go a long way in protecting that investment. And try and keep your daily to at least 30 minutes is usually my top goal. You can certainly incorporate other things with that if you want a couple more minutes and it turned out to be 32 minutes, it's not the end of the world. But what tends to happen in this community with overuse, if you don't have a good relationship with your pain, and this is going to resonate with some of you, but there's your regular pain and that relationship you have every day, and then there's, oh, I worked out and I exercised pain. And even something like this, if you're not an active person, just doing a little massage might present some pain the next day. And if you're not active and you don't know that your body hurts a little bit when you start doing new activities, Debbie gets all these phone calls about how sore I am, and it was that calf massage and that stretch she showed me yesterday. So less is more. Don't go a half hour. So that the biggest reason you're going to be sore is you're doing something new and your muscles, the body's lazy. It doesn't want to burn a calorie more than it has to. It wants to do it its own way. So, anytime you're trying something new, you're probably going to be a little sore for the first week or two. And then when you pick things up, you're making the position harder or you're going longer. But if you are sore, reduce durations, do more frequent, shorter sessions. And, if you are doing things like massage, as good as it feels, minute or two per position. So do more positions. Don't just sit there for 20 minutes and massage your calves. Um, Lesson learned early on in my career, I had a lady with rheumatoid arthritis that was a bodybuilder, and she's used to working out and pain. And I showed her how to do some calf massages and some quad massages. And I'm on this blog the next day, and she's talking about like she couldn't get out of bed, and I wrecked her neck and her legs, and I thought, what the heck? So I phoned her up and I said, Manon, what happened? What did you do? She goes, well, she was French. So it felt so good. I went for like a half an hour. And I said, like total? She goes, no, per body part. So she went a half hour on her calves, like she was on the thing for like 3 hours. So guess what? Even though it doesn't feel like you're doing a whole lot, I get all these questions about I'm not seeing results. It took you a long time to get into this position. It's going to take you a little bit of time to experiment, figure out what works for you, but consistent, regular use is the key. So even if you're just down on it for a couple of minutes, sitting on it, keep it simple. It's that regular use, I think, especially for the lymphatic and the pain piece, that you're going to see the improvements on. Once you start moving and feeling better, then worry about the planks and the push-ups. And we have a tendency to want to do it right now. And that's when we tend to overdo it. And if you are feeling that these sessions are giving you a bit of a lift, you're getting energized, you're moving and feeling better, that's great. But don't take on a whole bunch more. Give it about a month. If you feel good and you feel empowered, then you go paint the house and mow the lawn, and then you wonder why you're dying the next day. So just like anything else, when you do get a day of relief and you get that lift, take it easy, and do the machine a little bit more on the recovery side if you are taking on other activities.